Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are entering the extraordinary world of the Washington quarter dollar, a coin that has traveled through the most dramatic chapters of American history and evolved across economic shifts, metal shortages, political anniversaries, artistic revolutions, and minting innovations, becoming one of the most recognizable and widely collected coins on Earth. And as we dive into its origin story, we go back to 1932 when America was preparing to celebrate George Washington's 200th birthday, and Congress wanted a national tribute that would circulate in every pocket of every citizen, a celebration of leadership and unity at a time the nation was struggling through the pain of the Great Depression, and originally the plan was to issue a one-year commemorative $50, but public enthusiasm was so overwhelming that the idea transformed into a permanent circulation coin. And that is when the Commission of Fine Arts held a design competition that brought forward one of the most important artistic decisions in U.S. coinage, choosing sculptor John Flanagan portrait of Washington based on Jean-Antoine Houdon's sculpture, giving the quarter a powerful heroic profile that symbolized stability and strength. And when the first Washington quarters rolled out in 1932 in 90% silver, they immediately became symbols of national pride. But what many people don't realize is that production actually skipped 1933, because the Great Depression had reduced demand so drastically that millions of quarters already minted were left unused. And this unusual gap instantly made 1932 a more interesting year for collectors. And as we move through the early years of the Washington quarter, we see the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints each producing different mint mark varieties that collectors would chase for decades to come, especially the rare 1932D and 1932S issues, which had extremely low mintages and remain among the most sought after Washington quarters of the entire series. And then as the nation approached World War II, silver continued to define the quarter's identity. But soon economic pressures and industrial demand for metals pushed the United States Mint to explore alternative compositions. Yet the silver Washington quarter remained untouched until the monumental year 1965, when rising silver prices triggered a crisis so massive that people were hoarding coins faster than the mint could produce them, causing shortages across the economy and leading Congress to authorize a complete shift from silver to copper-nickel-clad metal, and this switch marked one of the most dramatic changes in U.S. coinage history, creating two distinct eras of Washington quarters: the silver era from 1932 to 1964 and the modern clad era from 1965 onward, and these two eras would later produce endless varieties, transitional errors, and wrong planchet strikes that collectors dream of finding. And as the coin evolved further, the reverse that had featured the majestic eagle for decades was replaced in 1999 with one of the largest and most ambitious numismatic programs in American history. The 50-state quarters program, a brilliant idea that ignited a nationwide collecting boom, pulling millions of children, adults, and new collectors into the hobby, making the Washington quarter more popular than ever. And each state design told a story: monuments, wildlife, heroes, landscapes, and cultural symbols, turning ordinary pocket change into miniature historical documentaries. And after the state program concluded, the Mint introduced the D.C. and U.S. Territories quarters, followed by the America the Beautiful National Parks quarters from 2010 to 2021, which highlighted breathtaking natural wonders. And finally the series transitioned into the American Women quarters, showcasing influential female figures who shaped the nation's cultural and scientific history, meaning that no other U.S. coin has carried as many different designs as the Washington quarter. And each chapter in this coin's journey, from silver to clad, from eagle to state, from parks to pioneers, represents a different era of America itself. And in this deep, cinematic exploration we will uncover all the layers of its creation, composition, metal transformations, minting challenges, artistic decisions, political influences, and hidden rarity factors that make the Washington quarter dollar not just a piece of currency but a living archive of national identity. And as we continue into the upcoming sections, you will discover the rare dates, the key errors, the extraordinary transitional pieces, the unexpected high-grade survivors, and the record-breaking values that have turned certain Washington quarters into some of the most expensive modern American coins ever sold. As we continue deeper into the creation and evolution of the Washington quarter dollar, the story expands into an even more detailed journey that connects artistry, national identity, minting technology, and unexpected challenges that shaped the coin from its earliest years all the way to the modern era. Because after the introduction of the quarter in 1932, the United States Mint had to confront a series of technical and cultural decisions that would influence how the world viewed this coin for generations, beginning with the fact that John Flanagan's original design, though iconic, faced significant criticism from artists who felt the details lacked the depth and refinement seen on previous classic coins such as the Standing Liberty Quarter or the Mercury Dime. Yet despite the criticism, the design became deeply rooted in American circulation. And over time, engravers at the Mint modified the portrait repeatedly, adjusting the sharpness of Washington's hair, the spacing of the lettering, and the relief of the eagle on the reverse to improve metal flow during striking, especially during years when the mint produced extremely high volumes of quarters, and these subtle modifications, hardly noticeable to the public, created dozens of minor design varieties that advanced collectors study closely, forming an entire specialized field within Washington quarter research. And as the 1940s progressed, the pressure of wartime metal demand pushed the mint to operate at maximum capacity, which created worn dies, weak strikes, and inconsistent details in certain years, especially from the Denver and San Francisco mints where equipment maintenance was stretched thin by wartime production schedules, causing some Washington quarters from the 1940s to exhibit distinct texture differences, doubled edges, faint feathers on the eagle, and specific die markers that today help experts identify extremely rare die pairs, making them highly desirable among specialists. And then, after World War II, the economic boom of the 1950s dramatically increased public reliance on coinage, causing mintages to explode to tens of millions per year as the Washington quarter became one of the backbone coins of American commerce, circulating through highways, diners, jukeboxes, theaters, arcades, factories, gas stations, and every corner of daily life, embedding the quarter not just into the financial system but into the cultural fabric of the country. Yet the biggest turning point of all came in the early 1960s when the rising price of silver triggered widespread hoarding, with Americans pulling silver dimes, quarters, and half dollars out of circulation at a faster rate than the government could replace them, creating a national coin shortage so severe that Congress considered multiple emergency solutions including aluminum coinage, larger mintages, reduced silver content, and complete elimination of silver. And as the crisis intensified, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Coinage Act of 1965, ending the 90% silver era of the Washington quarter and replacing it with copper-nickel-clad metal, a change that altered the sound, color, weight, and overall personality of the coin, officially dividing the series into two great historical eras, silver and clad. And this shift caused shockwaves throughout the country because millions of people didn't trust the new clad coins at first, believing they were cheaper, weaker, or somehow less real, while collectors rushed to save pre-1965 silver quarters as the hoarding frenzy reached levels no one had ever seen before, emptying bank vaults and grocery store registers as people cashed paychecks in rolls of coins hoping to pull silver pieces. And this dramatic moment forever elevated the importance of the Washington quarter in numismatic history, marking the end of traditional silver circulating coinage in America. And then as decades passed, the quarter continued evolving through subtle engraving updates, rim adjustments, and metal composition fine-tuning, until a new revolution arrived in 1999 when the United States Mint launched the 50-state quarters program, a visionary idea that transformed the Washington quarter into a storytelling canvas that captured the unique identity of each U.S. state, turning everyday change into collectible art. And families across America began searching through pocket change, building folders, trading duplicates, and learning regional history through each design, making it one of the most influential and successful coin programs in the world, producing over 34 billion coins and permanently changing the way people interacted with money. And after its success, the Mint introduced the DC and Territories set, followed by the America the Beautiful National Parks quarters, which celebrated some of the most breathtaking locations in the United States with dramatic high-relief scenes that pushed the limits of modern coin engraving. And eventually the series moved into the American Women quarters, honoring pioneers in science, civil rights, arts, and cultural transformation, proving that the Washington quarter is not a static design frozen in time, but a constantly evolving symbol of national identity, technological advancement, and cultural storytelling. And this long journey from 1932 to the present showcases the remarkable adaptability and historical depth of the Washington quarter, connecting generations of collectors, historians, and everyday Americans to the legacy of one of the most important coins ever minted. The Washington quarter dollar's journey into the world of rarities and high-value collector treasures begins with some of the most surprising and fascinating discoveries ever made in American numismatics, and as we move into this section, we dive deeper into the coins that transformed an everyday piece of pocket change into an object capable of selling for thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, starting with the famous 1932 issues, because when the first Washington quarters were released to honor the 200th birth anniversary of George Washington, the Mint struck them at only two facilities, Philadelphia and Denver, while the San Francisco Mint also participated with a smaller output, creating what would later be recognized as two of the most desired rarity dates of the entire series, the 1932D and 1932S. And both of these coins became legendary due to low mintages, with the 1932D having only 436,800 pieces minted and the 1932S having just 408,000, numbers that are extremely low for a circulation coin, making them the superstars of the series. And while most of these quarters circulated heavily, finding one in high grade is extremely difficult, which explains why collectors go wild when an uncirculated example surfaces, with a 1932D in MS66 fetching over $143,750 at auction and the 1932S in MS67 reaching prices above $45,000. But the excitement doesn't stop there because the Washington Quarter Series also carries some of the most remarkable error coins seen in modern U.S. coinage, including the unbelievable 1934 double die obverse, which shows strong doubling especially visible on the motto, "In God We Trust." And while this error is well known, it is scarce enough that high-grade examples have brought more than $15,000, but the 1937 double die reverse, though lesser known, also ranks among valuable varieties and can sell for thousands when sharply struck. And moving into the silver era, collectors also hunt for transitional errors and early striking anomalies such as the 1943 S double die obverse and the 1942 D double die, each pushing values into the thousands depending on grade. But one of the most visually dramatic errors in the Washington Quarter Series is the 1943 off-center strike or broad strike silver quarter, with extreme examples selling at impressive prices. Yet the true giant among Washington Quarter errors comes from the modern era, specifically the 1965 silver transitional error, created when the mint changed composition from 90% silver to clad, and a tiny number of 1965 dated quarters were mistakenly struck on leftover 90% silver planchets, instantly turning them into treasures worth more than $7,000 to $12,000 depending on condition, and some exceptionally high-grade pieces have even crossed the $16,000 mark, making them some of the most exciting transition-era rarities in the entire U.S. coinage landscape. And the surprises continue with the 1970 S-proof Washington Quarter struck on a 1941 Canadian silver quarter, an absurdly rare mint blunder that sold for around $35,000 due to the foreign host coin and mismatched date combination, a numismatic accident so bizarre that collectors still marvel at how it escaped the mint. And entering the bicentennial era, the 1976 Washington Quarter brought a special dual-date design, and although hundreds of millions were produced, errors such as double strikes, off metals, and dramatic die caps have sold for thousands. But the real sleepers of the series came from the state quarters era starting in 1999, a period that produced some of the most iconic error coins in modern U.S. history, particularly the legendary 2004 D Wisconsin Quarter with the extra leaf low and extra leaf high varieties, caused by an unexplained addition on the corn husk on the reverse design. And these coins skyrocketed in popularity almost overnight, reaching over $6,000 in top grades, with circulated examples still selling for hundreds. And the 1999 P. Delaware Spitting Horse die crack variety, another beloved find, continues to attract collector enthusiasm due to the distinctive line appearing near the horse's mouth, while other state quarter errors like the 2005 Minnesota double die varieties show dramatic extra tree doubling, with some versions selling for over $1,000. And even more excitement arrived when one of the most dramatic broad-struck state quarters, the 1999 Georgia off-metal error, ended up selling for more than $10,000 due to being struck on a 1999 dated experimental brass planchet, proving yet again that modern coins can still produce massive value discoveries. And as we move through the series, we also must highlight the rare off-metal transitional errors in the 1980s and 1990s, including copper-wash planchet strikes, wrong metal errors, and partial clad layer missing coins where the nickel outer layer peeled away to expose the copper interior, giving the coin a dramatic two-tone appearance and resulting in sales of several $1,000s depending on severity and grade. And going even further into modern times, the America the Beautiful quarters, beginning in 2010, brought their own line of standout errors including dramatic double strikes, broad strikes, partial collar errors, and full reverse rotations, each one producing prices ranging from hundreds to several $1,000s depending on rarity and eye appeal. And we cannot forget the 2019 W quarters, a revolutionary release in which the mint intentionally placed the W mint mark on circulating coins for the first time in the quarter's history, instantly creating modern rarities. And while they are not errors, their low population makes high-grade examples extremely valuable, with MS68 or MS69 examples selling for hundreds or even thousands due to their limited survival. And while discussing rarities, we also have to highlight the NGC and PCGS population reports, which show just how few high-grade early Washington silver quarters exist today, and the scarcity of early-date MS67 and MS68 pieces explains their massive values. such as the 1940 S quarter in MS-68, which sold for over $28,000, the 1941 S in MS-68, which brought nearly $20,000, and the 1950 D in MS-68, which crossed into the high five-figure range. And as collectors know, strike quality varies dramatically across mints and years, with some Denver mint coins being notoriously weakly struck, making well-struck examples extremely desirable, while the San Francisco Mint silver issues from the 1940s and 1950s present their own challenges, and the Philadelphia Mint, although producing large numbers, still created low population survivors in the higher grades, and when all these factors combine, low mintage, strike difficulty, rare preservation, and unique errors, they form the backbone of Washington quarter rarity culture. And this section sets the stage for the next deep dive into the most explosive values, the highest auction records, the rarest mint errors, and the unexpected discoveries still being found today in collections, rolls, estates, and pocket change. And now we continue further into the world of extreme rarity, escalating values, overlooked dates, and record-breaking sales in Part 2B, where we uncover even more treasures hiding within the extraordinary legacy of the Washington Quarter Dollar series. As we move deeper into the world of Washington Quarter Dollar rarities, Part 2B takes us into the heart of the series' most elite, most elusive, and most record-breaking discoveries, the type of coins that transformed the Washington Quarter from a common circulating denomination into one of the most studied and hunted collectible series in American numismatics, beginning with the legendary condition rarities that separate average high-grade coins from the extraordinary survivors that command staggering prices at auction, such as the breathtaking 1934 Washington Quarter graded MS-67+, a coin so pristine and visually appealing that it shattered expectations when it sold for more than $80,000, proving that even a relatively common date can become a powerhouse rarity when preserved in exceptional condition. And the phenomenon continues with the 1936 and 1937 quarters in MS-68, coins so difficult to find with flawless luster and strike that collectors treat them like crown jewels, with prices climbing into the $25,000 to $40,000 range, while the wartime silver issues, particularly the 1942 S and 1943 S, show some of the widest gaps between mid-grade and top-grade values, because while millions were made, only a tiny handful survive in MS-68 with full booming luster, allowing these coins to reach well above $20,000 at auction. And the trend continues with the late 1940s San Francisco Mint issues such as the 1949 S, whose MS-68 examples have stunned collectors by selling for over $30,000 due to the combination of weak strike, delicate surfaces, and low population. But the story doesn't end with condition rarities, because the Washington Quarter series is loaded with powerful variety coins, including the dramatic 1937 double die obverse, the 1943 double die reverse, and the visually intense 1942 D double die obverse, with strong doubling on letters and date that can take even an average collector by surprise when found unexpectedly in old rolls or inherited collections. And each of these varieties carries four-figure to five-figure potential depending on grade, making them essential discoveries for specialists. But perhaps even more exciting are the mint errors that have captured the imagination of collectors around the world, ranging from off-center strikes to double strikes, uniface errors, wrong planchet strikes, and transitional mistakes that act like windows into the mechanical chaos inside the minting presses. And among these, one of the most astonishing Washington Quarter errors ever discovered is the 1965 silver transitional error, where a few surviving examples were accidentally struck on leftover 90% silver planchets even though the mint had officially switched to clad composition. And these rare silver 1965 quarters have sold for over $16,000 in high grade and remain one of the most desired modern transitional errors in United States coinage history. But just as surprising is the 1970 S-proof Washington Quarter struck on a 1941 Canadian silver quarter, an error so bizarre and improbable that collectors are still fascinated by how it slipped out of the mint, and it sold for around $35,000, cementing its place as one of the most dramatic blunders of the entire series. And moving forward into the bicentennial era, we find the 1976 dated Washington Quarters that produced a remarkable group of errors, including double strikes, off-metal errors, and extremely broad-struck pieces that have sold for thousands, especially when found in high grades or with dramatic visual distortion. But the real explosion of interest in modern Washington Quarter errors came with the State Quarters program beginning in 1999, where billions were produced but still a surprising number of major errors escaped into circulation, including the iconic 2004 D Wisconsin Extra Leaf High and Extra Leaf Low varieties, which became national news and saw examples selling for over $6,000, creating one of the most thrilling modern coin hunts in U.S. history. Along with the famous 1999 P. Delaware Spitting Horse die crack, The 2005 Minnesota double die quarters showing multiple extra tree doubling varieties, some of which can reach over $1,000, and even more dramatic errors such as full off-center strikes, double strikes, and missing clad layer examples that push values into the thousands. And the discoveries did not stop there, because America the Beautiful quarters starting in 2010 added their own share of powerful errors like broad strikes, double strikes, incorrect planchet strikes, and full reverse rotation errors, which continue to surface in pocket change and estate collections. And while errors are exciting, no exploration of Washington quarter rarity would be complete without mentioning the remarkable 2019 W quarters, circulating coins intentionally minted at West Point with extremely low mintages, creating modern treasures from the very beginning. And high-grade 2019 W quarters have sold for hundreds or even several $1,000 due to their limited distribution and fast collector demand. And as we navigate this world of rarities, collectors must also pay attention to population reports from PCGS and NGC, which reveal shocking truths about survival numbers, such as how some dates technically have millions minted but fewer than a dozen certified in MS68 or better, explaining why routine dates unexpectedly become five-figure coins once they cross that elusive grade threshold. And this phenomenon is especially true for key dates like the 1950D, which in MS68 has reached staggering values approaching $40,000, or the 1955D, where the best survivors show such high clarity and detail that they command prices unimaginable just a decade earlier. And the story of value continues with the immense demand for full strike and full detail examples, especially in silver quarters where strike weakness was common, making fully detailed eagle feathers on the reverse a major grading premium. And collectors searching through old collections, bankrolls, and coin dealer inventories continue to discover unnoticed gems that were passed over decades ago, instantly transforming them into valuable finds. And this constant possibility of discovery is one reason the Washington quarter dollar series remains so thrilling, because a coin that has been sitting in a dresser drawer for 40 years might turn out to be a rare double die, or a transitional planchet error, or a high-grade condition rarity, worth thousands. And with the knowledge of these details, collectors today continue to build some of the most advanced quarter collections ever assembled, combining key dates, rare errors, and elite condition pieces, all contributing to the powerful legacy of this iconic American coin, setting the stage perfectly for the final section in Part 3A, where we will continue unveiling hidden details, unexpected rarities, and the deeper historical layers that turn the Washington quarter dollar into one of the most collectible and enduring series in U.S. coin history. As we continue the deep exploration into the Washington quarter dollar, this chapter pulls you directly into the heart of the coin's rarest mysteries, the hidden layers of minting history, the secrets of die creation, the evolution of production technology, and the overlooked historical moments that shaped the identity of the quarter in ways most collectors never realize. Because understanding the true essence of the Washington quarter demands traveling through decades of experiments, shortages, design battles, die failures, transitional mistakes, mint-level decisions, collector culture, and circulating history. And the more you uncover these elements, the more you see the Washington quarter as a living timeline rather than just a simple piece of silver or clad metal. Beginning with the powerful but often forgotten reality that the early years of Washington quarter production were full of technical challenges that left the mint constantly adjusting master hubs, experimenting with die relief, changing the shape of Washington's portrait, and modifying eagle feather patterns on the reverse to achieve cleaner strikes and more consistent metal flow. But even with these efforts, the early Washington quarters from 1932 through the mid-1930s are notorious for inconsistent sharpness, making fully struck examples with crisp curls in Washington's hair and boldly defined breast feathers on the eagle extremely difficult to find today, which is why collectors prize high-grade early dates so aggressively, because even with millions minted, only a tiny fraction have survived with the technical perfection required for top-tier grading. And moving through the years, each mint facility added its own unique fingerprint to the series. Philadelphia producing smoother surfaces but softer strikes, Denver producing sharper relief but suffering from more frequent die deterioration, and San Francisco known for thin lettering, uneven rims, and delicate reverse details during certain years. But particularly sharp strikes during the early 1940s when wartime efficiency unexpectedly resulted in some of the crispest designs of the entire series. And as America moved into World War II, the mint operated with immense pressure and stretched resources, causing worn dies to remain in service longer than intended, and this created die cracks, clash marks, polish lines, double details, and subtle variances that later became collectible varieties, each a small frozen moment of minting history. That reveals the intense conditions under which these coins were struck, and after the war, the booming economy of the 1950s caused a massive increase in coinage demand, with mintages rising into the tens of millions, putting extreme pressure on equipment and creating even more variations in strike quality, luster, die fatigue, and planchet preparation. Which explains why certain dates from the 1950s seem extremely common until you try to find one with brilliant luster, clean surfaces, and razor-sharp eagle feathers, a nearly impossible combination that dramatically increases collector value. And then the 1960s arrived with the greatest crisis in Washington Quarter history, when rising silver prices caused hoarding, panic, public fear of currency shortages, and the government's desperate attempts to stabilize the money supply, leading to the historic removal of silver from dimes, quarters, and half dollars, pushing the quarter from its traditional 90% silver composition into a modern copper-nickel-clad structure that permanently altered its appearance, sound, metallic signature, and minting behavior, creating two distinct eras of Washington Quarter collecting: the classic silver era and the modern clad era, each with its own challenges, errors, strike problems, and rarity possibilities. But the shift itself was so chaotic that leftover silver planchets remained mixed in the minting machinery, producing the legendary 1965 silver transitional error, one of the most dramatic and historically important minting mistakes ever made, representing physical evidence of the moment America left precious metal coinage behind. And as time progressed, the bicentennial celebration reshaped the identity of the quarter forever, transforming it into a symbolic piece of national pride through the 1776 to 1976 drummer boy design. A coin whose massive mintages hide the fact that true high-grade pieces with strong drum lines, full torch detail, and satiny unbroken luster remain extremely rare, especially given the strained conditions under which bicentennial coinage was produced, and the decades following the bicentennial introduced new engraving techniques, improved minting machinery, refined planchet quality, and the increasing influence of modern coin collectors, eventually leading to the launching of the 50-state quarters program in 1999. A program that brought the Washington Quarter into a new era of cultural relevance by using the coin as a canvas to celebrate state identity, history, and creativity, sparking a coin-collecting phenomenon unmatched since the mid-20th century. And this enormous program was followed by the D.C. and Territories Quarters, then the America the Beautiful series with its dramatic, high-detail national park scenes, and then the American Women Quarters, each series expanding the quarter's storytelling role, while also creating new opportunities for minting errors, die chips, double dies, and ultra-high grade rarities due to the extreme complexity of these designs. And through all these eras, the Washington Quarter has remained a bridge between everyday commerce and American history, carrying the marks of its time through every scratch, die clash, rim bruise, polished die line, or faint doubling. And understanding the subtle transformations of this coin across nearly a century reveals why the Washington Quarter holds a unique status not only among collectors but also among historians, minting specialists, and investors who recognize that the true value of this coin lies not only in individual rarities and auction records, but in the long and evolving story that has shaped every detail pressed into its metal surface. As we reach the final and deepest layer of the Washington Quarter dollar's legacy, this chapter unfolds the full emotional, historical, and collector power of the coin, bringing together its nearly century-long evolution into a living symbol of American history and a thriving centerpiece of modern numismatics. Because the Washington Quarter is not merely a denomination but a chronicle etched in metal. And to understand its value is to understand the complete relationship between minting techniques, national transitions, collector culture, design refinement, and the unstoppable flow of change in the American monetary system, starting from its earliest years when the quarter's identity was still forming, leading engravers and mint officials to constantly adjust rim thickness, device angles, portrait relief, and metal flow dynamics. Each adjustment leaving microscopic differences that specialists study today to identify early die states, late die states, overpolished areas, master hub fatigue, and subtle shifts in contour that reveal precisely how each coin was born. And as decades passed, the Washington Quarter became the perfect canvas for identifying the shifting priorities of the nation, with the early silver pieces reflecting the craftsmanship of traditional minting, the mid-century quarters reflecting wartime strain, the post-war issues reflecting economic boom, the 1960s issues reflecting metal shortages and desperate improvisation, and the later clad issues reflecting the rise of mass production in a rapidly modernizing world. And yet beyond the technical story is the human story of collectors, families, roll hunters, antique dealers, childhood hobbyists, and generational storytellers who each formed their own connection with the Washington Quarter, whether through state quarter albums filled by grandparents, jars of old silver coins discovered in attics, roll hunting adventures that revealed unexpected double dies, or the satisfying moment of recognizing a key rarity hiding in plain sight. And these human stories are why the Washington Quarter holds such a powerful emotional place in American life. It is everywhere, in pockets, in drawers, in parking meters, in charity boxes, in old boxes left by relatives, and in nearly every memory of spending or saving change, giving it a cultural presence far beyond its face value. And this broad presence is exactly why the Washington Quarter has produced some of the most iconic, unexpected, and dramatic high-value coins in modern U.S. history, because when a coin circulates so widely and for so long, it becomes the perfect breeding ground for minting anomalies, rare conditions, transitional errors, double dies, misaligned strikes, off-metal strikes, and condition rarities that slip into circulation unnoticed and remain undiscovered for decades. And part of the excitement in collecting Washington quarters is that even today, with nearly 100 years of history behind the design, new discoveries still emerge, whether it is a previously undocumented die clash in an obscure date, a dramatically misplaced mint mark from the 1950s, a sharp new double die in a modern state quarter, or a spectacular high-grade clad piece that defies the typical weak luster and poor surface quality of certain years. And these discoveries continue to ignite the passion of collectors, fueling auctions, research, and numismatic study with the same enthusiasm the Silver-era collectors once felt while searching through bank bags of pre-1965 quarters hoping to find sharp strikes or untouched mint luster. And as the Washington Quarter transitions into the future with new designs honoring women, history, and American culture, the coin's identity becomes even richer, carrying the legacy of the past while evolving into a currency that continuously renews itself by representing new generations, new stories, and new perspectives, and the combination of its silver era, its clad era, its state quarter boom, its National Park Series, its American Women Quarters, and the nearly endless list of collector varieties ensures that the Washington Quarter will continue to grow in historical importance and collector value long after our time, remaining a permanent fixture in U.S. coin collecting and an eternal bridge between the nation's past and future. And as we conclude this long cinematic journey of the Washington Quarter dollar, connecting its historical birth, its evolution, its rarest treasures, and its emotional legacy, we honor not just the coin itself but the millions of hands it passed through and the countless stories it carries, bringing us to the end of this complete deep dive into one of America's most important coins. And with that, thanks for watching.